Okay, so I know this topic has been done to death on YouTube, but to be honest, I've never been quite satisfied with the treatment it's received. These top 10 videos are usually put together by experienced motorcycle riders who compile a list of the latest low-cc bikes, go over the advantages of each one, and pick some favorites. Well, I'm way too type A to settle for that. I want to cover every type of beginning rider and every type of bike and let you know what you can expect when you buy any of them. And as far as being qualified to talk about this subject, I will refer you to my Teaching My Wife How to Ride playlist. Last year my wife went from being a motorcycle passenger to getting her license, first motorcycle, and vastly improving in confidence and skill. Walking her through this learning process reminded me of the huge amount of information that a new rider has to absorb, as well as the anxiety that taking up this amazing hobby can generate. I basically saw the process through the eyes of a newbie rider, which gives me a unique perspective on the kind of questions and needs you as a beginner may have. So this is how we're going to do this. First, I want to cover the 6 different types of bikes that you might be interested in, as well as the pros and cons of each type. These include naked bikes, sport bikes, adventure bikes, retro bikes, cruisers, and dual sports. In each category, I will give you my choice of best bike as well as some alternatives for riders who are a bit more experienced, maybe ones who have ridden on the dirt before, riders who are price sensitive about the price of the motorcycle and insurance, and riders who are physically smaller and who may be looking for a lighter weight bike with a lower seat. I will include bikes that are new, but I will also suggest some bikes that are commonly available on the used market and can be had for a fraction of the price of new machines. I may mention more than 10 machines here, but whatever, the top 10 title looks good and will get more views. Consider the extra bikes a bonus. One more disclaimer here. Just because I label a bike as appropriate for beginners does not make it a boring bike or lessen its value to experienced riders. I'm trying to suggest bikes that you will not immediately outgrow as your skills and comfort level increases. So I'm suggesting bikes that I, as a 6-foot-tall, 180-pound rider with over 20 years of motorcycling experience, would want to buy and ride and find entertaining or useful. Before we start, remember to absolutely obliterate that subscribe button and hit the bell to be notified when new videos are published. And we're off. Naked bikes are awesome to start on. They're light, comfortable, versatile machines and generally do not have overly tall seat heights. My wife started on a Honda CB300F. Honda has now replaced that model with a prettier and lighter CB300R. As much as I like the Hondas, my top beginner naked bike in this category will be the Kawasaki Z400. Why? Simply because it is very light, 364 pounds full of fuel, has a bit more power than other bikes in this class, 45 horsepower, and has 2 cylinders for smoother cruising on the highway. Single-cylinder bikes tend to get buzzy at highway speeds. In addition, it has a very comfortable neutral seating position and is Japanese. For those of you not in the know, that means it's high quality, reliable, and has a large dealer network, which is important in case your bike breaks down or you need parts ordered. Also, the Z400 looks good. It's gentle enough at low revs to learn on, comfortable enough to tour long distance, and well handling and powerful enough at high revs to be entertaining on a twisty back road or even on a track day. For a sporty alternative, I'd suggest the KTM 390 Duke. This thing is powerful, fast, good looking, and extremely well handling. The drawback of this bike is the aggressive riding position, which is meant to maximize the bike's performance, but does sacrifice a bit of comfort. If you're going to take your naked bike to the track often, get this one. If you want the absolute lightest in class, go for the aforementioned Honda CB300R, which weighs in at a helium balloon-like 317 pounds. Keep in mind though that this bike has a 31.5-inch seat height, so if you're shorter of leg, be sure to sit on one at a dealership before committing to buy. If you've had some experience on the dirt or road and have a good head on your shoulders, you could start on a Kawasaki Z650 or a Suzuki SV650 or the SV650's well-performing but aesthetically challenged cousin, the Gladius. Ugh. These bikes have been around for a while and can be found used at low prices, especially older SV650s. Keep in mind, however, that whatever you save on price, you will end up paying in insurance because higher displacement bikes mean a higher premium, especially in Toronto, Canada, where I live. Also, on a faster, more powerful bike, you're more likely to plant yourself head first into the back of a semi or other equivalent, so please don't get a 650 if you're irresponsible, immature, or just plain stupid. Finally, if the price of the bike and insurance are an issue, the Honda CB300F and the BMW G310R are both easy on insurance and have been around long enough that used ones can be found for relatively lower prices. I have a review of the CB300F on my channel, so check it out after you watch this video. So if you're not comfortable with going naked, perhaps you might consider a sport bike. The fairings on these provide more weather protection than the nakeds, and the seating positions on entry-level sport bikes tend to skew more toward the comfortable rather than the aggressive. My pick for top beginner sport bike is the Kawasaki Ninja 400. There's a theme emerging here. This is basically the same bike as the Z400, except it has a fairing and a slightly different riding position. And all the things that I said about the Z400 also apply here. It's reliable, has a good dealer network, is relatively comfortable for a sport bike, has enough power to entertain, is light and handles well. Kawasaki has been making this bike since 1986, except that it was the Ninja 250 then. It became the Ninja 300 in 2013 and grew to the Ninja 400 in 2018. In fact, this used to be the beginner bike most newbies learned on back in the day, so Kawasaki has had a long time to dial this one in. There's more competition in the segment now, but the Ninja just manages to hit that sweet spot of being a comfortable, smooth, sporty, great handling bike that can run around town, hit the twisties, do a track day, and be taken on a longer tour. New ones are around $7,000 Canadian, but there's a quintillion, literally a quintillion of the 400s, 300s, and 250s to be found on the used market. I've seen some 300s going for under $2,000. You will not find a cheaper bike out there in this price range. If you're going to spend a lot of time at the track, the KTM 390RC might tickle your fancy more than the Ninja, being a bit more of a committed sport bike. This bike has the suspension and steering geometry to make you feel like Valentino Rossi at your local track day. The low bar, ass up riding position while great on the track might get tiresome on the road though. If you're getting a sporty bike strictly for sport touring, the Honda CBR 500R is the best for that. Its 471cc engine will feel more relaxed at highway speeds. It's a bit heavier, so it will be less affected by crosswinds and passing trucks, and it has a soft suspension which will eat up bumps on a long day. Now, looks are a subjective thing, but in my opinion, the Honda is the best looking bike in the class. Finally, if you're not irresponsible, immature, or stupid, and maybe have a bit more experience, you could get a Kawasaki Ninja 650 or the faired version of the Suzuki SV650 called the SV650S. Tons of these on the used market. Please don't kill yourself though. Now on to the best adventure bikes for beginners. These are great bikes, especially if you want to go long distance touring. Their longer suspension travel makes them comfortable on rough roads, gravel, and even some dirt. And their tall seating positions give the rider a good view of the road, especially in traffic. They're also roomy and comfortable and the best for carrying a passenger. However, if you're shorter and a beginner, the reach of the ground may be a bit too far for you to be at ease on these bikes, as the seat heights tend to be on the taller side. So, the number one adventure bike suitable for a beginner is the Honda CB500X. It's no mystery that I like this bike. Check out my review of it from last summer. This bike has been around for a while, but was updated last year with a 19-inch front wheel and a new dash and improved looks. It has a decent amount of power and torque, can carry a passenger no problem, is comfortable, well built, has a huge dealer network behind it, and can handle well at high speeds. Is it perfect? No. It's a bit on the heavier side, 430 pounds with gas, has a high-ish seat height, 32.7 inches, and a new one will run you $8,400 Canadian. However, as I record this video in February 2020, some dealers in the Toronto area are selling leftover 2019s for $7,400, so if you look, you might get a deal. This is my wife's favorite bike. She's a Honda fangirl, and I can see why. Now, some of you may be asking, what about the KTM 390 Adventure that was just introduced? Well, I like what I've seen on YouTube of the bike so far, but I haven't ridden it. Hardly anyone outside of India has, so I'll have to reserve judgment. The KTM is lighter than the Honda and probably much sportier, but reputedly not as comfortable. Both bikes come with cast 19-inch front wheels. The KTM packs a ton of electronics not previously seen in this class, like traction control, rider modes, and even lean-sensitive ABS, which can be turned off on the rear wheel for off-road use. That's a lot of value for about $7,400 Canadian, but the engine is peaky and delivers most of its power at high RPM, which causes the rear tire to break traction more easily off pavement. Most of the Indian journalists who have ridden one have also found the traction control system to be too intrusive on dirt even when it's supposedly turned off. The Honda, on the other hand, is better looking, my opinion only, and it's a Honda, which means reliable. So we'll have to wait until a chance to ride the 390 arrives before a final decision is reached. But this looks like a choice between comfort, reliability, and dealer support on the one hand, and zippy performance, lighter weight, and an unprecedented electronics package on the other. One more recommendation. If you are shorter and want an adventure bike, especially if you want to ride off-road, then the Royal Enfield Himalayan is a great beginner bike to start on. It has a low seat height, 31.5 inches, as low as some naked bikes, has a big 411cc motor which is perfect for chugging around in the dirt at low revs, and it's also relatively low priced, with new ones running about $6,200 Canadian, and older or even last year's leftover models much cheaper than that. The drawback to this bike is that we don't know how reliable it will be, and dealers in Canada and most other places are few and far in between. Oh, and it also has only 24 horsepower. It's slow to accelerate, though it can ride that torque curve up to highway speeds, but not above them. Most importantly of all, it looks super cool, like an old Italian dirt bike from the 60s. And as usual, if you're bigger and more experienced, blah blah, there's the Suzuki V-Strom 650 or the Kawasaki Versys 650. Same drill with the 650s. Irresponsible, immature, stupid. You get the message. Maybe you're into something a bit more traditional, something that makes you feel like Marlon Brando in The Wild One. Do classic Triumphs and BSAs populate your dreams? Does the sound of a parallel twin growling through pea-shooter exhausts make your head turn? You may in fact be a hipster, which means that there's only one type of bike for you, and no, it's not a 1973 CB 550 cafe racer built in your buddy's backyard. Don't get one of those unless you want to spend 3 hours wrenching for every hour you ride. Yes, my skinny jean friend, you need a retro bike. These are the epitome of cool, yes, but they're also pretty good bikes. Their seating positions are comfy, their engines are pleasant, and their looks are to die for. Before there were sport bikes, adventure bikes, and enduros, there were motorcycles. And they all looked like these. People commuted on them, raced them, took them off-road, and toured on them, and you can still do all these things on retro bikes today. So the top bike in this category is the Royal Enfield Interceptor 650. Yes, it's a 650, but don't worry, it's air-cooled and only puts out 47 horsepower. I've ridden this bike and loved it, so make sure you check out my review of it from last summer. Now, why did I pick it as the top bike? Truthfully, it's a great combination of just enough power, good looks, lightweight, 445 pounds full of fuel is light for this class, pretty decent handling, and an unbeatable price in this segment. This bike costs around $8,000 Canadian, which undercuts the cheapest Triumph Twin by $3,000. Oh, and it comes in a cafe racer called the GT650, which looks good and handles a little more sporty. Now granted, this bike isn't perfect. I rode it with my wife on the back, and she found the seat was a bit short and she kept sliding off the back. Also, when you look close, you can see some cheap plastic bits, and as mentioned before, there aren't many Royal Enfield dealers in the majority of the world. But come on, just look at it. And listen to it with the accessory SNS exhaust. Enough said. This is a great low-cost addition to a class of overpriced bikes, and it's the one I'd get if I was wanting a retro for my first bike. If you feel that this option is too expensive or too large for you, I will also suggest the Suzuki TU250X. This bike is powered by a 250cc air-cooled single-cylinder engine, putting out a pavement-shredding 16 horsepower. It costs around $5,000 Canadian, though I've seen leftover models from last year on sale for $4,500. Yes, for a new bike. Now, I wouldn't take this thing on the highway. It has a rear drum brake, though I hear that brake works just fine. And if you want to carry a passenger, both you and your passenger may want to consider anorexia. But it's a new bike for 4.5 Gs, and it looks damn good. And it will probably last forever, so you can teach your kids to ride on it someday. It's worth a look. Now, if you don't care about going overly fast or carving corners on a twisty road or track and you just want to kick back and chill, better break out the chaps, beanie helmet, and black t-shirt and pick yourself up a cool cruising machine. Riding a two-wheel recliner is a great way to spend the day, so let's take a look at some of these rolling works of art. The cruiser I'd most recommend for newbie riders to start on is the Honda Rebel 500. This is a great bike with a 471cc parallel twin engine producing a respectable 47 horsepower. Check out my review of that bike from this past summer. It's my most viewed video so far, so I know that there are lots of people interested in this one. Why is this bike my recommendation? Because it's reliable, good looking, light, only 414 pounds wet, easy to ride, and still has a decent amount of power to cruise at highway speeds and have fun. The Rebel 500 costs in the neighborhood of $7,000 Canadian and is pretty bare bones out of the factory, but you can outfit it with a windshield, highway pegs, and saddlebags to make a great commuter or touring bike out of it. Other recommendations? If the Rebel 500 is on the pricier side of things, you could take a look at the Rebel 300, which is pretty much the same bike but with a 286cc single-cylinder engine. This will be lighter and less expensive, but also will be working hard at highway speeds. If price is an issue and you are looking for a cruiser, then the used market is your oyster. There are tons of cheap cruisers out there for ridiculous prices, from the old Rebel 250 and Yamaha V-Star 250 to the Suzuki Boulevard S40, or the Savage as it used to be known, to many other bikes in the 600 to 750cc category that have soft throttles and low seats and can chug along in a relaxed manner. You can even find some used Harley Sportsters for reasonably low prices, for Harleys that is. These are fairly heavy bikes, but the power on the 883cc models is very manageable for beginners. Okay, finally we've come to dual sports. These are bikes that are often confused with adventure bikes in that they are taller and can ride on dirt. But the difference between dual sports and adventure bikes is that dual sports should generally be lighter and more capable off-road, and not nearly as comfortable on a long distance ride. Also, despite the fact that they sort of look like dirt bikes, they differ from them because they are road legal, tend to be bigger and heavier, and are generally not as capable off-road. So these are bikes that you can ride to the trail and then ride on the trail. You can also turn them into seriously capable adventure bikes with the addition of a few well-chosen parts. You can even turn them into supermotos and indulge your anti-social impulses. So, without further ado, the best dual sport motorcycle for beginners is the Kawasaki KLX 250. A third Kawasaki? Wow, I sound like a fanboy even though I've never owned a Kawi before. The reason I picked this bike over its competition is it's the least intimidating in the class with the lowest seat height. The seat sits 34.8 inches above the ground, which seems tall on paper, but with the bike being so narrow, feels much lower. It's also the lowest in the segment. The power delivery is soft and it won't buck a beginner off if they're not smooth with the throttle. Of course, I have to mention that it will barely do highway speeds, and you're not popping power wheelies on this bike, at least not when it's stock, but that's just fine with most beginners. Most want to explore the dirt on a bike that isn't going to be sapping their confidence with power slides and other unpredictable behavior. Oh yeah, and at under 280 pounds full of fuel, this bike is by far the lightest motorcycle I've mentioned in this video. So, other suggestions for dual sports? Well, if you're bigger and need something that will keep up on the highway, then the Suzuki DR650 is a good choice. It's tall, has a softer throttle for a 650, and isn't very expensive. It'll cruise at highway speeds all day long, 2 up, and can do some lighter off-roading when the pavement ends. This is a very versatile motorcycle. So I realize that I mentioned way more than 10 bikes here, but I'm big into providing good value for the viewer. If I've missed any bikes that you think I should have included, don't hesitate to mention them in the comments below. If you're just getting into motorcycling, welcome to this wonderful hobby, and whatever you choose to ride, ride smart and ride safe. If you have questions about anything in the video, don't hesitate to ask in the comments. As always, thanks for watching. Please subscribe and hit the bell to be notified when the next video comes out. Keep the rubber side down and may the spokes be with you.